I'm Anna Marie Jones, and this is Community Voices, coming to you from Radnor Studio 21. Today's guest is a personal hero of mine. Daralyse Lyons is an author 20 times over, community activist, actress, speaker, and yoga instructor. Basically, Daralyse is a talented creator of her mind's eye and heart's desire. Daralyse, thanks so much for joining me today.
Thank you so much, Anna Marie, for having me. I'm at that introduction. Wow.
Well, seriously, I'm not kidding when I say you're a personal hero. The first time I met you, I was in awe. Not only are you a talented writer, I mean, who writes 20 books? It's prolific.
Well, thank you.
How many years? How many years did you do that in?
I really started taking on writing as a vocation and an avocation, I want to say in 2009, so it's been about 10 years, and I love it. I can't imagine life without being a creative.
All right, come on. It's taken me maybe 3 years to write my first book, and I'm also honored to have you helping me do that, so which is how we connected.
Right.
And then the fact that, so we're sitting down and talking about the book and the writing process, and then we also connected on the fact that we're both biracial.
Right, absolutely, which I think is such a beautiful thing. I mean, more and more it's happening that people are biracial, multi-ethnic, multicultural, and but I love it because I feel like there's a certain level of resonance that comes from being both like belonging to a multitude of worlds and maybe not quite fitting into a certain category. And I think that was both of our experiences.
Absolutely. But a little different than mine. It seemed that you were more comfortable because you had shared with me that your mom was more open to talking to you about it and coaching you on how to feel comfortable in your own skin. And I didn't quite have that experience. So you writing this book, I'm mixed. I just feel like, it helped me, and I'm a grown-up, so I can only imagine how this will be so well received by parents and young children. I mean, what a gift.
Yeah, thank you so much, and I'll definitely share the book. It's called I'm Mixed, and I wrote it under a pseudonym, under the name Maggie Williams.
And why did you do that? Why did you decide to write under Maggie Williams and not your own name? And where did that name come from?
Yeah, Anna Marie, thank you so much for those questions. So partially because I had written and published so many books in the adult literary space, I was advised to have a separation between my children's books and my adult literature. So I've done that. So Maggie Williams is the name under which I write all my children's books, and I've written a couple others, and I'm in the process of publishing another. So that was the reason behind the pseudonym. But the reason behind the specific name, Maggie Williams, is when I was 8 years old, one of my own personal heroes, my aunt Maggie, she died of leukemia, and I've always wanted to keep her memory alive. And then my other personal hero, my grandfather, who passed away, maybe in 2006 or 7, I think, his name was John William Lyons, and so Maggie Williams is a testament to my aunt and my grandfather, the people who I love so much.
Well, it's a really nice way to commemorate them, and
yeah.
Wonderful. Well, let's talk a little bit about I'm Mixed.
Sure.
And what is the one concept or point you would love anyone who's reading the book, whether they're white, black, brown, mixed?
Yes, absolutely. So for me, the essence of the book, the takeaway of the book, is that we get to own all sides of ourselves and really love ourselves and embrace all of who we are. And I found that whether it's an issue of race, gender, just being a multifaceted person, I think there's just a way that sometimes people want to put themselves into boxes or feel like they have to confine themselves. And my experience is that when we can live an integrated, whole life, it frees us to be happier, healthier, and it also enables us to be, this show is about community, right? It allows us to be part of more communities when we can be all of who we are.
I agree. And because I don't like to make any show about me, but because this is my experience, I feel like I can talk about it and be sort of a value-added, add value to this conversation. So, growing up for me, I wasn't able to really have that discussion. My dad was from the South. He came up here. He was very quiet about who he was, and he kind of blended. So he looked more like you, lighter skin. People might might have thought he was Mexican. That's what a lot of friends, and I didn't actually come out and say, no, he's not Mexican, he's African American. I didn't really have that conversation because I wasn't comfortable in my own skin. I was so confused. I mean, look at me. I'm tan now, but I'm I'm white, and I felt more comfortable just blending and just hanging out with my white friends and not having that conversation. And so then that put me in sort of awkward situations sometimes, and still today, the majority of my friends are Caucasian, and there are many times, and I know that they're just kidding, and I know that, especially I think men more than women are comfortable with making racist jokes, and so because I'm not wearing a tag or my skin isn't darker, these jokes will be passed on me, and literally the hairs on my, all the hairs on my body just stand up. I'm like, whoa, that is so uncomfortable.
And what do you do in those situations?
Well, maybe that's a next book we can address.
That's right. What do you do in those situations?
What do you do in those situations? I mean, I've handled it many ways, from letting it pass over, letting it just go, and just feeling horrible, and letting that now bury deeper who I am. I'm like, oh, now I need to hide deeper who I am. I'm not going to share. I think I acted that way more when I was younger.
Right.
But now that I'm older and I'm more confident with who I am, now I'm more in a space where I can have that conversation with someone.
Yeah.
Maybe not right on the dime. Maybe I'll take some time and, take a step back and process what I heard and how I can handle it. So, for the viewers out there who might go through this, maybe they have grandchildren who are multi-ethnic. I just think it's teaching people how to take a step back and how to, with grace, have the conversation with someone and know that you're going to make them feel uncomfortable. So how can you do that in a very tactful, graceful way?
Right.
And so that I've done that before, where I've called the person days later and I said, I just said I felt very uncomfortable and I want to explain to you how that made me feel. And, and I think sometimes it definitely ruins the relationship, but maybe it's not the relationship worth having if they can't then come back and say, I'm sorry, and we move forward and we learn. We both learn from the experience.
Absolutely. And I think, you mentioned that some people who might be watching might have grandchildren, or they might be multi-ethnic or what have you, but I really think as a culture, on any side of the divide, it's really important to, and I don't even like the word divide, but as a culture, it's just important to acknowledge that, my intentions might not match how someone else receives them, and I want to be cognizant of how I'm coming forward and who I'm being in the world and who I'm impacting. And so I think it's really important that we have these conversations with everyone, because there's such a lack of real understanding of other people's experience sometimes. And for me, one of the things in the book is sometimes people are curious. And that's a good thing. I love, I have friends who are multi-ethnic, biracial, and they get asked, what are you? And for them, that question takes them aback, and it feels very an affront. And I love that question because for me, it's a point of entry into the conversation about race and multiculturalism, and how do we all be in community with each other while acknowledging that each person might have a different experience or a different background.
Yes. Did you grow up in a multicultural area?
Yeah, so I grew up in Greenwich, Connecticut, which is not very diverse. It might be different now, but I think part of my experience, I had an African American father who wasn't in my life, and a mother who is Caucasian, but also really recognized that she wanted me to have both sides of my identity represented, and she understood that walking down the street, people weren't going to look at me as a Caucasian child, but I was very much her child. And so she really emphasized Dara, you're biracial, and isn't that awesome? And she didn't really know how to do my hair or any of those things, which would have been nice, but she really equipped me to just to embrace my ethnicity and to feel like I belong anywhere. I have access to every different space, and that was really wonderful. And I didn't really realize until growing up and going to high school and college and all of that not everybody had, as you point out, not everybody had those conversations. Not everybody had access to, to the understanding that, like, you're not less of a person because you happen to have multitude of backgrounds. And in fact, those multitude of backgrounds can make for a very rich, rewarding life.
Absolutely. And that's what I've embraced. That's what I've come to embrace on my own. It's taken a while to get there. And I just love this book because I think that anyone could read it, no matter what their skin tone, and get something from it. It's so simple and the message is so clear. And I love that you put in it that question, what are you?
Yes.
Going back to that question, it's really okay for someone to ask that question, and it really gives that person, it empowers the person who's being asked the question to answer it with, wow, I get to explain everything of what I am.
Yes, yes.
So great.
Definitely. And I'll show the book again. It's one of the things that has been so incredible for me is I've gotten to speak about I'm mixed at all sorts of different, school events and multicultural fairs and on panels and different things. And so I've really taken this book to an audience of 3 and 4-year-olds, like preschool at the lowest level. And then I've also had the opportunity to speak to parents groups without their children even being present and read the book. And invariably, people come up to me afterwards and they just are like, thank you so much. I mean, some people have been moved to tears, and it's a kid's book,
right.
But
it's
people
so
will
simple,
cry.
but it's so profound at the same time.
Right. And it's like, oh my gosh, I can actually, this is the conversation I can have with my child, as opposed to, a lot of the perspective on race tends to be like less about empowerment and love and inclusivity and more about sort of like pain and judgmentalism. And I know there is that too in the conversation, so I'm not negating that. Right. But I think when kids learn young, like, isn't it awesome that you can be all of who you are? It equips them to move through the world differently.
Yeah, with confidence.
Yeah, yes.
That's great. Well, we need to get this into more libraries. We need to get you on a speaker series in Radnor. And we have a lot of work to do.
Let's make it happen.
All right, well, let's switch gears because you have a lot going on.
I do, yes, right.
Can you tell me about your how did you get into working with urban creators? Can you first of all, tell us what Urban Creators is, and then we'll talk about how you found your way working with them.
Yeah. So I'll share that I'm not part of the organization. Urban Creators is a phenomenal platform in Philadelphia, and what they've done is they've erected a farm. Have you heard of urban farming? Or I guess I should explain it.
But please
either way,
explain it to the viewers.
Yeah. So what it is essentially, especially in an inner city environment, right? People don't have access to farming and land reclamation, and there are kids who grow up today without even seeing green, without just being exposed to the value of being in nature and connecting with it. And so Urban Creators is a phenomenal organization, and they've erected a farm in a very urban area of Philadelphia, and they're bringing people in and teaching them to do farming, land reclamation. They're connecting with nature, and it's improved outcomes for these as kids, especially. It's improved their outcomes as students, their socialization. It's helped decrease violence in the area. It's just an incredible, amazing initiative. And so I did a leadership development training workshop and through Next Level in Philadelphia. And one of the things that comes out of that is we always choose a charity to really get behind and contribute and make a difference in what they're doing. And so we chose Urban Creators, and they're phenomenal. And so we're committed to raising $50,000 in a month to support their organization.
Okay.
And I'm taking on the challenge of raising $10,000, myself, but just because I feel like it's so important. And as you point out, I had access to certain things as a child that some urban youth do not have access to, and I feel like it's really important for me to give back and to help lives like when they're early and moldable, because it changes the trajectory not just of these kids' lives who are getting this exposure, but like everyone's life. Our whole culture and our whole society is different if people can be more connected to the earth, to each other, to like their own lovability, to feel more of a sense of empowerment, to be able to grow something. So I'm super passionate, and I'll be quiet about it now, but it's really
well. So
important.
If anyone wants to help with this initiative, especially with your $50,000 29-day goal. How can they get in touch with you?
Well, they can get in touch.
We'll put your email up on the screen.
That would be great. So they could get in touch with me, Daralyse at daralyselyons.com, and that's DARALYSE at DARALYSELYONS.com, and they can get in touch with me really about anything, about giving to urban creators, about my book, about writing. I'm all about the community engagement and helping people and just being really connected. So I would love to hear from anyone.
Can I ask, let's backtrack a little bit. What is your, did you have a career before you started this? Or
yes.
Where did you start out?
Where did you go to school? Okay. So I went to my first college on a volleyball scholarship. I went to Molloy College, and then I transferred to NYU. So I graduated from New York University with a double major in English and Religious Studies and minored in history. So I was a little bit of an overachiever, I guess, back in the day.
I would say so.
And still, and then I got out of college and I went into finance, and it was not for me. But I really did that for a number of years and felt like, okay, I can either have money or be happy. And then I realized, I'm so miserable that I really want to do what lights me up inside. And so I left finance, became a yoga teacher, a writer, lived the values espoused in my kids' book, that I had early on. I divorced myself from that for a while, and in 2009 I really plugged back in, and I thought, okay, how can I add the most value, and how can I live according to my purpose? I've been doing that ever since, and it's been such a gift.
You know what? The beauty of the show, and I'm starting to see more of a theme. There's this thematic thing going on where I'm interviewing guests who have done that. You're the second guest. So I had maybe 2 guests ago, I had someone who wrote a book to help children, and he did the same thing. He was a Harvard grad who worked on Wall Street for many years and said, this is not helping me to fulfill my higher purpose. I need to align with that more, which is exactly what you did. And he left it all behind, and he's so much more happier. And because he's doing what he knows he should be doing, just like you're both creating this content that's helping the world. And that is so valuable. I mean, that is like divine creation.
Well, it is, and I feel like that's true for everyone. We all have our unique gifts, talents, skills, right? And part of embracing our identities as people is embracing that gift, and then, as you say, aligning with it, and then living it. And I think that's where we make the most impact.
Absolutely. I think it just starts to flow. When you find that alignment, everything just starts coming out. And I mean, I feel like it's happening with me, with the show and writing my book and all these things. It took time, but I aligned to what I should be doing, my true calling. And it has to do with helping community as well. And it's all just free flowing now, it's coming.
Doesn't it feel like an unstoppable force sometimes?
It does.
Yeah, it's amazing.
For a while I felt this tap, tap, tap. You should be doing, X, Y, Z. And when you feel that push, taking the leap is sometimes scary, especially leaving money behind, your financial, making all that money is kind of cool too, but
I was so lucky, Anna Marie, because I was so miserable that I had to make a change. And I think, I've heard it said that good is the enemy of great. My life was not good before I started doing what I was meant to be doing. And I think the challenge is for people who are relatively happy to take that leap, but if you're not, which I wasn't, it almost feels like, okay, I've got nothing to lose. So I feel really fortunate looking back that I was like, okay, I can either be miserable and that's no way to live, or I can take this leap of faith and it has to be better. So I feel really lucky that was my story.
Wonderful.
Yeah.
I'm so glad. So I'm wondering if there are any other questions I have for you about the community. Oh yeah, so have you been to is it called We Do Grow Farms?
Yes,
Urban Creators?
yes, yes, and it's a beautiful space and it's wonderful, and they have it's so cool what they're doing with art and farming, and it's like I highly recommend that, if people can go check it out, figure out a way to get involved. It's a really, really amazing organization.
So in this space, I was reading online that they had 3 acres of land that basically was being used as a garbage dump. Is that true? And they cleared it out.
I think that is, but I would probably have to do a little more due diligence. But yeah, they I know that they completely revitalized the area and just made it something that is so beautiful in the middle, and it didn't used to be that way at all.
And then everyone's able to, I guess, is it now like a co-op where everyone can in the community can take food from?
Yeah. It's beautiful. It's wonderful, and it's actually not. So I live in Mount Airy, so it's not in my community, but it's in the urban, central Philadelphia, and it's and to me that also feels like part of my larger community, right? Helping and supporting people who didn't grow up in an area where there's tons of trees and farms and grass and whatever.
And good grocery stores.
I know, yeah, right.
Speaking of Whole Foods,
I know, I
even
live
more organic than Whole Foods. It's wonderful.
It's like the true farmers market,
Absolutely. Well, thank you for coming on the show today and talking to us about I'm Mixed and what you're doing with the growing. Is there anything else you want to add or talk about? Are there any other books in the pipeline?
Oh my gosh, yes.
Or that you've written that you want to share?
I'm actually taking on a challenge. This will be the first place I've ever spoken about it.
Okay.
So I'm excited for that.
Okay.
Yes. But one of the things that I was inspired to do is to write a book about being multilingual. And so I'm currently working on a children's book about speaking both Spanish and English, and kind of what that experience is of being a young person and also being in this translator role. So that's a fun undertaking. And cool. Because I am not a multilingual Spanish speaker, I'm very much relying on my little sister for help and friends and, just different people in the community. Because I feel like my kids' books, it's really important to me to speak to the experiences of children where there could potentially be an area of struggle there. And I want to empower them because I believe that the earlier we're empowered, the better. And so I'm Mixed. I wrote another book about called Celia and the Glue Man, about having a gluten sensitivity, because I have a gluten sensitivity. And so, really the kids' books are about what are the issues that I see, and what are the things that I wish, if I were younger, or if I would want my children or whatever, the young people in my life to be able to really have access to, so that they could be empowered to live differently. I want to write kids' books that change lives.
Great. And once again, we need to get those into our library.
Yes, absolutely.
We'll talk off air, but I do have a connection. So
wonderful. Yes, thank you so much.
So remind me.
I will.
But with that, I want to thank you so much for coming. You're such a pleasure to speak with.
Thank you so much. And you're one of my heroes too, Anna Marie. No, you really, you're such... just the work that you do in terms of community and loving people. You have just the biggest heart, and so I'm so grateful to be part of your life.
Oh, thanks. Well, yeah, same. So anyway, if you'd like to support Daralyse in her effort to raise money for urban creators or learn more about the book, please contact her by the email she provided, and it's on the screen. And I want to thank you all for tuning into Community Voices, and I look forward to seeing you next time. Thank you.